Okay, this is my Moonman M2. It came with an extra fine nib, and I purchased from Bobby a fine nib and a medium nib replacement for it. And I saw a video online of Bobby showing you how to take this nib out of the feed. It is not easy. So first off, I drained the ink out and rinsed out the section and the feed and the nib as much as I could, and then you unscrew the feed from the section. That's fairly easy, and the nib is attached, and you can tell that right now I've already got the nib off it. But the nib, here's the extra fine here. It was a way too fine for me, but it's friction fit right in here, and this part right here goes all the way up to that point inside this feed assembly. This feed assembly doesn't, as far as I can tell, come out. The feed doesn't come out of the feed assembly as far as I can tell. But what you have to do is wiggle this side to side like that until it slides out. Now that wiggling, I used this stuff that I've covered my desk in. It's basically rubber, vinyl, I guess, but it's sticky and has a lot of friction to it. So I covered one end here and one end here, and basically held it as Bobby instructed me in the video by the sides here like that, and wiggled it back and forth by holding on to this part and wiggling it back and forth as much as possible. You really have to grab it, not here, but you have to grab it here on the shoulders to get any leverage on it, and trying to wiggle it as much as possible without breaking it. It was quite an ordeal to get it off, but once it started moving, I thought, success. So he has said that to replace the nib, I'm going to replace it with this fine, if I can get a handle on it here. You place it back on the feed so it lines up, and then you use your rubber or your vinyl and you push on the shoulders here until it goes all the way in, and it has to go all the way into that point right there. So I'm going to try this here on camera. I'm going to try to wiggle it, and look at that, it went all the way in. Going in was a lot easier. See if I can focus on that. You see it goes all the way into that part right there. It should be lined up as well. So the point of the feed should line up with the channel. Great. And then one of the things you have to watch out for, and I was lucky that I found this, is this little guy right here. That's a little O-ring that goes right there in that little channel right there. And while I was tugging on it and everything, I pulled it off without knowing it. There's another one right there that didn't seem to come off at all, which is good. But this one here just fell off without me even knowing it was there. So now we have to stick it back on. And this is a bit of an ordeal, just stretching it around. I might do that off camera because it's going to take a bit. But I'll do that first. And then what you do is you screw the whole thing back in to the section, just like that, all the way. You still see I have some of my Yamabudo still in there. Before I put it all together, I'm going to put some silicone grease back on this section and on that little O-ring as well. Just slather it on there, screw it down tight, and wipe off the excess. But I'm going to put that little O-ring on first, off camera. Okay, so I've got the feed back in, and I was mistaken about that little O-ring. And the O-ring didn't go into the slot. It just sat on the back of the feed, and you screw it in, and then it sandwiches. When you thread it in there, it sandwiches against this collar, sealing off the outside of the feed. Whoops, sealing off the outside of the feed, so that the ink goes down the center of the feed. See, it isn't totally successful because I got some ink in there, but I think that's normal. So anyway, I'm going to put a little silicone grease on this from my 3-year supply. I should say 3 lifetime supply. I've got 3 bottles of this silicone stuff, and you only need a drop at a time, so it'll last 3 lifetimes. Might need a little bit more. Don't mind that there we go, another drop. There, get it onto that O-ring. Now, I'm just going to put it on the body here, and then take it off again, just to get that silicone grease going. There we go. There, it should be good to ink that puppy back up again. Not good to have a shaky hand when you're doing that. I like to leave a little bit of an air bubble in there so the ink can slosh around. So I fill it up about 3/4. There we go. Just gonna make sure I get the ink off the threads there. And in we go. And she's tight. Now, we'll let that sit upside down for a moment, and come back and see what the writing sample looks like. And we'll be back and give it a try and see what a fine feels like. Oh, now my Moonman doesn't line up. That's interesting. It did before. I might not have twisted that section all the way around properly. Oh well, minor thing. We'll come back to you in a minute. Okay, I've got it inked up, and let the feed saturate a bit. And let's see if I can get it to write. Moonman M2. This is now a fine nib. Well, It's better than that sewing machine needle of an EF, but I might go through the trouble of changing that out to a medium. I do like the gold though on this, but the medium is a chrome colored one. Aha! So I've got a problem here. I dipped that, and the feed isn't exactly feeding. So I'm going to have to investigate, see what went wrong. Okay, I just wasn't patient enough waiting for that ink to get down through that feed. I had dipped it for the first bit, and then the feed ran out, but it caught up just within seconds. So there's the rest of it. Quick round fox. Jumps. Oh dear. Over. Lazy dog. Yep, it's a fairly wet pen now, and that's not too bad. I think I'll write with this for a couple of weeks and see whether I can stand that fine nib. If not, I'll go to a medium, but that seems to work. But that's the process. Anyway, it's not easy. You have to really be patient with pulling that nib out of there, because you can crush that feed if you're not careful. Wow, I was worried that feed wasn't going to work, and it's just gushing now. That's terrific. Thank you very much for watching, and that's all she wrote.